and welcome to After Scientology, Straight Up and Vertical, the weekly show where Tony Ortega and I get together and go over the week's events in the world of Scientology, as reported on Tony's Substack. Tony, welcome back.
Hey, thank you. As you can see, I'm still on the road doing a little traveling, but the Wi-Fi here hotel looks pretty good, so I'm here.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, what a week. We got some stuff to talk about. I've actually got more than the usual number of things to bookmark to get into. So let's do it. Starting off with Patty Moyer told a story that sounded so familiar to me. Why don't you go ahead and break it down for us?
Yeah, so Patty, I've known Patty for many, many years, and she's been on my podcast a couple of years ago where we talked about her interesting history as an OSA volunteer, spying for Scientology. I knew about that. But she sent over this piece of writing about something I wasn't familiar with that I think a lot of Scientologists can relate to. And that is the way Scientology and Scientologist-owned businesses really put people into terrible financial situations. And in Patty's situation, she was a salesperson for a company that sold photography in New England and Boston, real nice photographs of various New England scenes to be put into dentist offices and things like that. And it was Scientology owned, Scientologist operated, and everybody on staff, from the CEO down to the salespeople, were all OT except Patty. And they really believed, if you can have a total OT staff, then all the LRH tech will kick in and the company will really do great. So they put a lot of pressure on her. Patty, you've got to go to Florida. You've got to go OT3 and all that. And, she couldn't afford it. So they worked out a deal where they helped her with the money to pay for the OTs. And then they would keep paying her salary while she was gone so she could at least pay her bills, because she had a husband who was on staff at the org making nothing, 25 bucks a week or something. She had a kid at the Delphi school, and the tuition was there, was due. No, we'll take care of all that. Go to Florida, do your OT. So she went down there, and she said she really enjoyed it, because going OT at Flag, everyone around you all believes in the same thing. She said it was really kind of great. But what they couldn't deliver any bad news to her while she was there, because she was going OT. So she gets OT3 done just in time for LRH's birthday in, I believe this is 1990. And she came back to Boston to realize it was a complete disaster. They hadn't paid the money. None of her bills had been paid. She lost everything. She and her husband had no money for their bills or the tuition for the school or anything. So she was just talking about how, they keep pushing you, because there's this idea in Scientology that if you're OT, then you'll be a super person, and so Superman, and all money will be flowing in. But it's all just built on lies, and the real world comes crashing down on you. And she was, recovering from that for years. And she really does a good job, I thought, describing the mentality that even though all that was going on, she still wouldn't question, Elron Hubard or the tech or anything. And I just thought she did a really great job helping us understand how somebody gets into that situation and how they still would never blame Scientology for it. Wasn't that the lesson you took from it too, Chris?
Well, that and yes, absolutely. Absolutely. That is there. Let me add a couple other observations. I was in staff for 8 years in Sea Org 17, right? So I saw plenty of examples of exactly what Patty described, of Scientology companies, quote unquote, right? Where, it's mainly Scientologists, making promises, over-promising, under-delivering, just straight up lying to get whatever it is they're trying to get. They told her they'd pay her while she's gone, and then they gave her nothing while she was gone. And she made a point in the article that the other people in the company were getting paid full rate, right? The money was there. They just decided not to do it. And that kind of thinking is, well, it's criminal in the real world. I mean, she could have sued them. She could have gone after them. She obviously didn't, because we're all Scientologists here. And this is what I wanted to point out is This is where even at the public level of Scientologist OTs, not even the staff or the Sea Org, even the public level Scientologists will abuse each other with this concept of, well, you're ultimately responsible for your own condition, Patty. So just make it go right and figure it out and get the money. And, you're the salesperson. Let's go. Rather than acknowledge the fact that they just flat out lied to her and ruined her life. I mean, she has come back and she's in a pit, and she didn't know anything about that. Even her husband, staff member at the Boston org, I guess, doesn't say a word because we can't interfere with her OT levels. It's it's crazy making is what it is, and it's a real testament to the power of how Scientologists learn to abuse one another with Scientology principles. Oh, you didn't have the money? Well, it wasn't our fault. We didn't give it to you. It's your fault. Go write your OWs. It's all right there in the story. I was blown away by that. And of course, angered because I still get pissed at stuff like that, because I just hate to see the injustice,
Yeah.
And I've never seen such blatant nonsense like that, except in the OT companies. When the OTs are in the executive branch of a company, whether it was Craig Jensen's outfit or whether it was this place or whether it was any of these, these chiropractors and, lawyers and whatnot, they all pull this crap on each other. And it's real dog eat dog world in the world of Scientology. They're not kumbaya. They just pretend to be. And, oh, no, we're going to get you to OT. We're going to push you power, while they literally cut her off at the knees, as long as the church gets their money. So I just had to, say all that. So good story. Really good. I'm glad Patty is sharing as much as she is about all this stuff. It's really enlightening stuff. Now, this was a funny one. Over in France, there's this graphic novel or comic book thing coming out. What is this? Electric Miles?
Yeah, I always like hearing from my friend Johnny Jacobson. He's a British journalist living in Paris, and he's been very helpful over the years, helping us understand what's going on with Scientology in France. I guess the last thing he did was he was at the grand opening of the Paris Ideal Org, and we got a great report from him about that. This time he was just having a good time. He was at a bookshop and coffee shop, and noticed there was this new graphic novel he hadn't seen before called Electric Miles. And when he picked it up just because he liked the look of a L.A. noir kind of a graphic novel. But once he started going through it, he started realizing there's something very familiar about this. And as he started reading and seeing this character had come up with this new way of thinking, and he'd written a book that anybody who read the manuscript jumped out a window. Is like, wait a minute, they're doing a story of Elron Hubbard here. So I thought it was worth pointing out. It's a really prominent French team that has done some great things in the past. They were the ones that did the Death to Stalin story that ended up being a great movie, a lot of fun. So Johnny doesn't know if they're going to continue on the Hubbard story or maybe go off on another tangent. But it looks gorgeous, and it looks like it's a fun read, and it goes through that very early late 1940s L. Ron Hubbard history. And so I thought it was worth mentioning. Very fun. Thank you, Johnny.
Absolutely. It's funny because it's one of those things where you take one of Hubbard's tall tales, his whole origin story of this book Excalibur, or the Dark Sword, right, that he supposedly writes, or he did write it in 1938, and you turn it into this fantastical story, graphic novel, and it's not Scientology. It's all pre-Scientology, right? So you can't even necessarily get the church after you because it's lore Hubbard was spreading before Scientology was even a thing, right? I mean, supposedly the word Scientology first appears in Excalibur, but nobody's read it, so we can't tell. Right. But I thought it was a great thing to jump on because it is just begging to be told as a story. Here's this manuscript. It's like H.P. Lovecraft's, Necronomicon, right? It's like all you have to do is read it and you'll go insane.
Right, right.
It's wonderful lore. So, and it's a fun story. So we'll see where that goes with that.
I thought Bill Franks had. I might be wrong about that. It was either Bill Franks or someone else had provided a description of it and had seen it, and it was just. I think it was Jerry Armstrong has that on his website, and it was just basically a very boring early version of Dianetics.
There's a
It was
little
about
bit more in
10
it.
years too early, 10 years too early than that. But yeah.
Yeah, I actually quote the entire quote from Forrest Ackerman about the manuscript because I think he's the one you're thinking of, and it's a little insightful. It's a little interesting. Hubbard had a weird take on people. Basically, thought they were all out to get you, all out to get each other, and describe that in some detail in the book, and that's broken down in there.
Okay.
But it's never seen the light of day. It's really lore, even within the Scientology world, and if there's any copies of it anywhere, it's up in LRH archives, and it ain't ever going to see the light of day. And sure enough, Hubbard himself said in a lecture that all the stuff that's in it was put in Dianetics and Scientology. So I mean, he's really, anyway, we don't have to go any further, but yeah, it's interesting stuff. Now this made me laugh out loud. The article about Laura Loomer and Pam Bondi.
Oh yeah. So yeah, I mean, look, I'm on the road. I'm just checking social media very casually, but I can see people are sending me copies of something. What's going on? Oh my goodness. Laura Loomer called Pam Bondi a Scientologist. And I knew, I mean, I got to deal with that because look, I don't know if you're not familiar with Laura Loomer, the New York Times just this week called her President Trump's blunt instrument. And The Guardian the week before had said that she's the most influential, Twitter influencer of the second Trump administration. She's not a government employee. She's not in an elected position, but she has enormous influence on Trump, and that's what matters. And she, among a lot of people, are really upset by the announcement from the Department of Justice under Pam Bondi and FBI under Kash Patel that there is no Epstein list, that he did kill himself in custody, and that there's not enough information in his files to charge anyone else with a sex crime. So, I pointed out, look, this is the center of the QAnon conspiracy, right? The heart of the QAnon conspiracy, which the GOP has dipped into and allowed to become a big part of the mainstream. The heart of the QAnon conspiracy is that there is this high level group of pedophiles who run the world, and they're being protected by various people, and that Epstein was catering to them. And if we could just get Epstein's client list, it would shock the world as to who's on this list of high level pedophiles. So this is something that all these folks have been, QAnon goes back to about 2016, right? 2017. And so people have been waiting a long time. A lot of people voted for Trump based partly on the idea that he was going to expose the Epstein files. So now they come along and said, no, nothing there, folks, move on. And a lot of people are very, very, very angry. But when Laura Loomer expressed that anger by calling Pam Bondi a Scientologist, I was like, oh man, I'm gonna have to deal with this. Because we've been writing about Pam Bondi and Scientology for years. Pam Bondi was the Attorney General of Florida. Now she's the U.S. Attorney General. She's been very friendly with Scientology. She's from Tampa. She was multiple times, gave speeches and did fundraisers at the Fort Harrison or with Clearwater Scientologists. She has praised Scientology, saying that it has the same human rights goals that she does. And so this was when we wrote about this when she became Attorney General. It's like, wow, now there's no way the Department of Justice is going to be interested in investigating Scientology, not with Pam Bondi there. However, given all that, given the actual photos I have of her, of Pam Bondi speaking at the Fort Harrison Hotel, even with all that, I haven't seen any evidence that she's a Scientologist herself.
Right.
She's been a member of this Radiant Church, evangelical church in Tampa for at least 11 or 12 years, something like that. And I think and no, it's not a front that she's secretly a Scientologist. I don't see any evidence of that. She's very friendly with Scientology. That's enough of a scandal, I think. But and then when this was brought up to Laura Loomer, like when the Daily, what's that conservative? Anyway, one of them, the editor reached out to Bondi's people, and they said, "No way, she's not a Scientologist." And he tweeted that back at Laura Loomer and said, "I don't care. I don't believe her." So, she's got no data. She's just, she's angry. A lot of people are angry at Pam Bondi, and this is how Laura Loomer is expressing it. But the reason why it was interesting to me was, hey, if MAGA is getting unhappy with Pam Bondi, how about paying some attention to other connections between Scientology and the second Trump administration? The fact that Trish Duggan is Scientology's wealthiest donor, and she was one of Trump's biggest donors through 3 election cycles. And now he appointed her to the board at the Kennedy Center. That's one. John P. Cole, OT Scientologist, married to Greta Van Susteren. Trump made him deputy envoy to Ukraine, handling those very sensitive negotiations right now. Grant Cardone, we know, is very close to President Trump. He's brought him on his 10X program, and he spoke at the Madison Square Garden rally the week before the election. So, there's just no question that the Trump White House has been safe pointed by Scientology, and we're not going to see any investigations of Scientology in the next 3 years. But on the other hand, if Laura Loomer perceives this Scientology thing as a way of punishing people who she perceives as not loyal to Trump, maybe the little wedge could start getting stuck in there, Chris. I don't know. I just think it could be interesting to see if she continues down this line or not.
It will be very interesting to see what happens. All I can say for sure, based on what I've seen during the last administration, when Joy Vila was making a play, was that when Trump retweeted something Joy had sent out, MAGA followers were outraged and telling Trump straight up, dude, she's a Scientologist. What are you doing? And I think that this is a point where left and right meet, is the recognition of the toxicity of Scientology. It's out there. It's been out there. Everybody's seen the documentaries and the shows, and they know what Scientology is all about. So that's what frankly surprised me so much about Trish Duggan agreeing to do the I'm a Scientologist video was, she's swimming in evangelical circles right now in the America First Policy Institute and in the Trump administration. That's who's actually kind of managing and running stuff in that administration, is people from the Heritage Foundation, et cetera. These are evangelical folks, not Scientologists.
That's a
So
very interesting, I didn't think about that. It's a very interesting point that it is odd that she would agree to be on Scientology TV now when she's getting so much attention as a Trump donor.
yeah.
Anyway, but again, it just seems like it's not something MAGA seems very concerned about, but Laura Loomer may change that a little bit. We'll see.
Yeah, that's right. I'm glad that we've had a number of talks, you and I, on this show about these connections, and keep putting it out there, and hope that somebody picks it up, because it's important. It's not a small thing. We don't seem to see, just as a comment, we don't seem to see David Miscavige hungry to get into the White House or trying
Okay,
to.
and that was the coda to my piece this week,
Mm-hmm.
was that, Elron Hubbard was a, typical mid-century, red baiting reactionary. He was very open with his support of the apartheid regime
Yeah.
in South Africa. He pledged support to it. He wrote to the prime minister down there and said that Scientology was loyal to the rightist cause. Hubbard's politics were pretty out there during his lifetime. I don't know, maybe people were ignoring it or not, but David Miscavige is much more enigmatic that way. He really has kept away from electoral politics. And because look, what according to Dave himself, what his biggest accomplishment as a leader of Scientology was getting tax exempt status in 1993.
Yep.
And of course, traditionally, there's this, if you're running a church, you are not supposed to endorse candidates or, endorse parties from the pulpit. That would violate something called the Johnson Amendment at the IRS. And so churches are careful to try not to violate the Johnson Amendment, which would make their tax exempt status vulnerable. Well, just this week, the Trump IRS has decided it will no longer enforce the Johnson Amendment.
Exactly.
And people, if you're a pastor, if you're a big pastor, and you feel like you want to endorse a local candidate, you can go ahead and do that now, which is
That's
a
right.
huge change. So David Miscavige has been very careful personally to stay out of that kind of thing, but now he's got the green light. I mean, he's got Pam Bondi at Justice. He's got the green light to endorse if he wants to. There's just, Scientology has nothing to worry about from the federal government for the foreseeable future, as far as I can tell. I mean, it's got its own problems. I'm not saying they're not, they have recruiting problems and that kind of thing, but they don't have to. I don't think they have to worry about an FBI investigation.
Not institutionally, I agree with you. As we saw last week before, the DOJ will go after individuals, but not because or not in spite of their Scientology status, like those chiropractors. But institutionally, I don't think Scientology has anything to fear from Pam Bondi's DOJ. One thing I will say about Miscavige in politics is I think it's an area that makes him nervous. And I think that Miscavige is a worshiper of money, and that the whales are across the spectrum ideologically. I think you can find, if you survey that out, you'll find ultra conservatives, but you will find liberal political leanings in the Church of Scientology and amongst the whales. And I think it's in Miscavige's best interest, and I think he knows this. This is just conjecture. But I think he knows it's in his best interest to not rock that ideological boat right now, that these whales are the support system for Scientology and will be into the foreseeable future. And so he positions himself in his public statements since 1991 with the wake-up call above the political scene. He's not. Remember Elron Hubard saying in his policies that we will one day be running things. We're the ones who are going to take over and run stuff. And Miscavige kind of likes that point of view and forwards it. So that's why I think it makes him a little nervous to position himself on one side or the other. It's in his best interest not to. And quite frankly, if that's true, he's right as far as the money goes.
Well, what he craves is to be considered an important mainstream religious leader.
That's right.
Somebody who's leading like the Mormon Church, or somebody who's, he craves that sort of, attention. And so you're not going to get it if you become a political firebrand. He wants to seem like he's very ecclesiastical. He's the ecclesiastical pope of Scientology. He demands respect. That's really where he gets off.
I agree. And I'm glad you brought up the Mormons, because Miscavige definitely looks to the Mormon Church as for an example. And not to get too into the weeds on this, but Senator Mike Lee from Utah is in a lot of trouble with his own church right now for some of the controversial stuff he's been doing recently.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Right. So the Mormon Church is kind of like, slapping him right now because, hey, man, don't bring disrepute on us,
Right.
So just throwing that out there. All right, let's move on. We've got another expose this week, which we'll talk about, which was on Aaron Cairo, and you got quoted in this, and I got to say I was pretty impressed.
This is a publication called the San Francisco Standard. They approached me quite a while ago. They had read my coverage of Aaron Cairo, and they wanted to learn more about who, they understood that he was this, YouTube skateboarding guy, has a 6 million subscriber YouTube channel. But they didn't know a lot about the Scientology side. They wanted a little help, so I kind of helped them understand that it really is remarkable that a guy that's running this YouTube business At the same time is ED Day of the San Francisco org. And, how do you do both, Chris? I mean, ED Day, that's a more than full-time commitment. And it was interesting because as they were reporting it, they found some real good stuff to kind of fill the whole picture about who he was and what he was doing. Um, as that was happening, you and I are covering Aaron Cairo win the birthday game, and we actually had a speech of his and all that.
Yeah.
All that was going down as these folks in San Francisco were working on this story. So I was real interested to see how they put it together. I thought they did a very good job, especially for readers maybe who aren't all that familiar with Scientology. I think they did a very good job, describing that thing that I was saying, how interesting it is that he's leading these two lives at the same time. And maybe the one is suffering, the skateboarding side has really he had to close their kind of well-known facility, what they were all using. And we talked about this before, but Cairo had gone on video and said, look, he admitted he'd handled it poorly. I think one of the big strikes against him was he wasn't explaining to people why he was shutting things down and letting people go. He gave us the explanation about how TikTok had really hurt YouTube, and that the people like him that were making a lot of money on long form videos were really losing a lot of cash because everything was going to the short form because of TikTok. I don't know how much of that is true, but I think it's still amazing that a guy that runs a channel as big as he has also is the guy who won the birthday game for the San Francisco org.
Absolutely. It's a double life that is hard. I will say that. I mean, I was up close and personal with EDs for decades, and it is a full-time job. They tell you day hours. Yeah, that's a bunch of crap. You are on call 24/7, and they'll pull you down to LA for correction anytime they want, stuff like that. And if they call, you answer. That you don't get to say no when you're the ED. I mean, you're under an intense amount of pressure because you're the main contact point from the Sea Org into the org. There are other places, other people who are supposed to be the main contact, but it's always lands on the ED's head, especially the income demand and where's the people and where's the resources and all that. So he's dealing with that whole mess in San Francisco, a major area for Scientology. And then he's running this, this company and YouTube channel. And he's not wrong, I'll say, as a YouTuber, that the model changed and YouTube did that on purpose. And it was a business decision they didn't need to make. I don't like YouTube's management these days. But they decided TikTok would be their competition instead of just kind of doing what they did best as YouTube. And Aaron Cairo was absolutely right. But to say he handled it poorly, yeah, some of the quotes from his employees or former employees in that article were like pretty ripe.
Yeah.
I was like,
Yeah.
damn,
Yeah.
dude. They weren't happy with him and how he handled things. So just interesting stuff. Another window into the reality of how Scientology affects people's lives. I think that's really the takeaway from this one. Okay, now this is interesting. And this may be the beginning of something big and a big, huge change, or it might be just a blip. We're going to have to see. But Clearwater and this bloody street.
Oh.
And Miscavige changing tactics now. What happened?
Well, this is a crazy story you and I have been talking about for months now, Chris, and it all goes back to the Elron Hubbard Hall project that Scientology wants to do. They want to build this giant auditorium right across from the Flag Building, and between them, they want to put this little park in Elron Hubbard Park. In the middle of that, there's this little street, South Garden Avenue. And when we first started talking about this a few months ago, if you remember, Chris, we had learned that the city council members had been approached individually by David Miscavige. And that's what made it kind of interesting. And what the city was asked was to vacate the right of way. And then they asked Scientology to pay 1.3 million for the land under the street. And then Scientology could do whatever they wanted with it. But they opened it up for a 30-day consideration for counterproposals, and a counterproposal came in. Brooks Gibbs submitted this thing, Save the Garden, which would instead use that as a tribute to the African American neighborhood that used to be there. So the city council decided that it was interesting enough that they would take a little time to think about it. And in that period, David Albritton, one of the city council members, decided that he had not heard enough information from Scientology, and he changed his vote from yes to no, and that made it 3-2 against. So the day of the actual vote in May, Scientology at the last second pulled back its petition, pulled back its application. Said, we'll come back later. So we've been waiting to see what they were going to say this time, Chris. I remember, based on what was in that letter, we assumed they were going to come back with more of a safety argument, like you can't have people there when the events are going on or something. That's not what they're doing. What they're doing is really interesting. Their attorney submitted a letter about a week ago saying, okay, we're about to resubmit the application, but you, City of Clearwater, had everything wrong before, and it's going to be different this time. And they had found this 1922 plat, this original map where the streets were laid out and the right-of-ways. And according to that plat and the way this was all distributed, Scientology is saying the city does not own the underlying roadbed. And the only decision the city can make is whether or not to vacate the right of way. The city has no right to sell that land to Scientology for 1.3 million, that Scientology already owns it as the adjacent landowner. So Scientology is basically coming back and saying, listen, you embarrassed us, you made us look bad. We were going to pay you 1.3 million for that street. This time, you're going to give us that street and we're not paying you a penny. Ooh, now, is that Miscavige to a T or what?
Exactly. Which also recontextualizes a little bit that letter from the Attorney General Florida coming to the city council. Only in that, I think that's another Miscavige message of, look, I can take this as high as you guys want to go. Yeah, how much do you want to mess with me now? Right. And so there's that letter, and then which they reacted, appropriately. They were like, yeah, whatever. But now comes this demand, and it's sort of gloves off time for David Miscavige. It's like, okay, really? You really want to get down and dirty and do this? All right, we ain't paying you guys a dime. Not one red dime for Clearwater. I don't think it'll be the protest march. So, and this is now clearly in Miscavige's mind. We know how this guy thinks. These guys are just a bunch of SPs. And now he has to roll over them. Right. And this Brooks Gibbs, yeah, screw this guy. Streets, African American, yeah, whatever. This is ours. We're taking it. Right. This is absolutely how he's talking to his people, right, Miscavige. So, so now this may be a point of no return. He might commit to this. And if so, money's not on the table now. Now it's just a pure power play. And I don't know how that's going to work out for him.
Yeah, I got a tip from a reader, and I looked up a video Monday night's work session a week ago. Mayor Bruce Rector was a little worked up and said he was not going to be intimidated, and I think he was referring to this letter.
Okay.
But then I watched Thursday night's regular council meeting. They didn't bring it up, so I'm not sure how they're going to deal with this. May all end up in litigation. I don't know, but I just thought that was such a classic Scientology move to come back and say, okay, we're going to do this over, and this time we're getting what we want, and screw you, basically.
That's right.
People in Clearwater should know this is the entity that they are dealing with, and stop, ever assuming they're ever going to do the right thing. So that'll be coming soon. We'll see how that plays out.
That's right. Well, one last comment on that is if it does go to legislation, we know how Scientology plays legally. They'll bring in the big guns, they'll drag it out, they will make this a difficult and expensive fight for the city of Clearwater out of pure spite. Oh, you weren't going to give me the money? Well, now I'm going to make you really pay. I mean, just all the dominoes line up in the way Miscavige thinks about stuff. So, but we'll see. Maybe, maybe some offers will be made. Maybe some back deals will be done. Who knows where this is going to go? Okay, now, Mark and Claire Headley getting blossered. I love the way you put that. What was this article about?
Well, Mark and Claire, are amazing. They're so good at what they do, and their story's amazing. I remember writing about Blown for Good when it came out in 2009. Fantastic story of how they escaped from Scientology. They were in based in the Sea Org in 2005 is when they escaped. And they've been subjected to Scientology for fair game, just really extreme for forever. And but it seemed like it had died down a little bit as far as Mark and Claire were concerned until it picked up again just in the last 2 years. I've noticed that they've really gone after Claire very hard at the Stan League and at Twitter, and now Freedom Magazine. I think it's related to the fact that Judge Charlene Omedo decided to allow Claire to testify as an expert on Scientology in the Danny Masters criminal trial, the one that put him in prison for 30 years to life.
Yeah.
I think that that's just enraged Miscavige. Oh, but Tony, Danny's been declared. Why would it matter? No, I don't believe that Danny Masterson's been declared suppressive. I think there's no real evidence to that,
Yeah.
and lots of circumstantial evidence to the contrary. This is one of them. The fact that since Danny's trial, the Scientology's really gone after Claire hard. And the latest is this piece in Freedom Magazine, Zombie Freedom Magazine, I call it, because they haven't put out a print issue in 9 years, but they're 6 years, 6 years. But they continue to put things on their website, trying to pretend that there's still this issues journalism publication. Mostly, it's just stuff for CCHR's benefit about psychiatry. But this was a piece kind of rare for Freedom, from my perspective, calling Claire Headley a criminal. And it's based on a website that she and Mark only operated for 6 months back in 2014, so 10 years ago. And it was just, the Mark and Claire Headley are amazing. They came out of Scientology with nothing. They just the story of how they got going again is incredible. I've been fortunate they've told me that story. These people work so hard, and they have tried so many different things, and so many things have worked out for them, but some things haven't. I mean, that's the kind of people they are. They tried a lot of different things. One of the things they tried in 2014 was this website where you could sign up to be a product reviewer, and you would be recruited then to write product reviews for Amazon sellers. And of course, they would not tell you what to say if they were recruiting honest reviewers to make honest reviews, but that sellers want reviews, good or bad. And so this was a way to try to help those sellers find people. It didn't work out. They only did it for about 6 months. And she wasn't even aware that the website is still there. I did find it. I looked at it. You can tell it's a zombie website. There's nothing going on with it. It's been dormant forever. But Freedom found it and decided to call Claire a criminal over it, claiming that it violates FTC regulations or something. It doesn't, clearly laws that were passed years later or something. But I was surprised to see that it was done by John Blosser, right? This guy Blosser is interesting. He was a National Enquirer reporter who lost his job in a scandal because he wrote a story about Philip Seymour Hoffman, supposedly from one of Philip's, with quotes from one of Hoffman's friends, that was real shocking or whatever. And it turns out he had Blosser had gotten played, and somebody had made up some quotes and pretended to be the friend. And so the friend then sued, saying, I didn't talk to this guy, I didn't say these things. Huge lawsuit for the National Enquirer, cost them tens of millions of dollars. Okay, yes. And Blosser was out. His career's over. He'd never get a job anywhere else. So who does he turn to? The Church of Scientology. And I first heard about him because I was one of his first targets then. This was when he was kind of very quietly doing things behind the scenes, and he was skulking around talking to people about me. Then he was reporting on the Aftermath Foundation people. Mike and Leah found out about that. And then he went after Graham Barry. And that's when Graham actually put it on the record in a court case. So that's when I finally decided to write about what I knew about him. And I think at that point you realize, well, yeah, the jig is up. People know that he's what he's doing. So then he started writing under his own byline last year at Freedom. And now his latest victim is Claire Headley. And it's, if you look at it and you read it, you realize what the truth is. It's just this smeary garbage where, they anyway, it's the kind of thing that both Claire and I tend to ignore from Scientology because people know the source. They know they're lying about me. They know they're lying about Leah and all that. But because it was Blosser, and because, Claire wanted to talk about what the truth was, we decided we go ahead and do this story. She and Mark had actually done a video already talking about it and explaining what this business was. So once in a while, it is worth taking on Scientology smears and lies. And I want people to know about this Blosser guy. I mean, this is who they hire. And, these disgraced former journalists that can't get work elsewhere. And I'm sure he's making a lot of money writing these garbage articles. So it's worth pointing it out, I think.
Absolutely. It's as we've commented on many times with Scientology hires, they go bottom of the barrel. That's what they go for. Whether it's their PIs, their lawyers, their journalists, quote unquote. Because this isn't journalism. This is just yellow journalism, I suppose you could call it. And it's character assassination 101. And Blosser should be ashamed of himself. And that's and if you see the Hubbard quotes on this stuff, he says dig up or make up, lurid, salacious stuff just to smear people. And maybe in the 50s and 60s, that kind of thing was more effective than it is now. But, now it's really, to be blunt, getting attacked by Scientology in the modern age is a badge of honor. I mean, people see it and they just go, oh, Scientology's after you. You must be doing good things. So, so there you go with that. Okay, now let's wrap up on a lighter note, because I got to tell you, I was really blown away by this one. Out of all the reporting you've done on LRH 2.0, this is the one that just, wow. Let's talk about this one.
Well, first, we just had a small legal update. It's not too big a deal, but this Justin Craig, this California ex-con who legally changed his name to Lafayette Ronald Hubbard, and began trying to convince people in Washington State, these independent Scientologists, that he is the reincarnated founder of Scientology. And some of them believe him. Some of them to this day believe him. But since October 2021, he's been sitting in a jail in Anderson County, Tennessee, awaiting trial on some very serious charges. But it always just keeps getting pushed off and pushed off and pushed off. And in the meantime, he's got these followers that are sending him money. And so he continues to have these revelations about what he has called Asperianism. He's also called it expedited Scientology. But, I think the previous one to this one, Chris, was when he announced that he wanted to start a new Sea Org. That was fun. But this one, anyway, the little legal update is just that he did get apparently sideways with his previous attorney, who's now been replaced with a new person. I have the new person's name in the story and a picture you want to see. And his next court date is July 28th or something. It just keeps going on and on. But in the meantime, like I said, he keeps sending things out to his followers and they get forwarded to me. And the latest was this really interesting, I don't even know how to describe it, Chris. You're going to have to take over on this one because this is all about tech, man. And basically, he was trying to explain why people unmock clear, how they become clear, but then it kind of fades away. Why is that happening? It shouldn't be happening. And he's got this wild explanation. He starts with a small technical thing about what he calls reciprocals, where you should be recalling a car, but you recall a truck or something like that. But then it takes him onto these wild avenues about the formation of the universe 85 quintillion years ago, that then about the people that created it at that time and how they were involved in various political struggles, one involving the Arachnean Empire, whatever that is, Chris. I can't wait to, and of course, he does that classic Hubbard thing where he's like, "Well, I can't go into that right now, but in the future, I'll tell you about that later." And because I have to say, Justin Craig, LRH 2.0, sitting in jail, does have a little flair when it comes to his trying to write like Ron and sound like Ron. It is a it's the science in it is nonsense. but it comes off like somebody that knows something about the origins of the universe and all that. And I just thought it was wonderful, and I thought people would enjoy it. Did it convince you, Chris, that he has now figured out clear and how to make it stick?
It convinced me of a couple things. Not necessarily that. Um, okay, let me just say, yeah, he starts off with this thing about the inversion principle, and that's kind of okay, fine. The opposites, reciprocals. Here's how to audit this stuff. But you nailed it. I mean, he is channeling Elron Hubbard more effectively in this article than anything I've seen him write before. Now, we just did on this channel a full breakdown on the OT8 Lucifer thing, and I went into some deep dive detail on that and really had a good time doing it. And in the process of doing that, kind of figured out L. Ron Hubbard from a whole different angle, and really feel like I understand that man now. So to see this and to see how good this is, I mean, this is not just copy paste of some L. Ron Hubbard writings. This is Justin Craig like going to town as L. Ron Hubbard. And I got to tell you, I've never seen anybody or anything approximate Hubbard the way this man can. The only word, and I was saying this before, it's impressive. I'll give it to him. I'm impressed. The fact this guy's a violent criminal in jail right now and he's doing this, damn. I mean, this guy has studied some Hubbard. Because this reads exactly like him, and it's no longer a question for me why these independent Scientologists would glom onto this guy. He sounds like old school Hubbard. You know, it's obviously it's not the real deal, and obviously this man isn't L. Ron Hubbard brought back. Hubbard said he was coming back as a politician. Remember that, right? Not as a criminal and incarcerated in jail. So there is that aspect of it, but this man's writing is on point for how Hubbard does stuff. And that arachnid thing, I almost fell out of my chair. That was so good. I mean, he's just dropping little hints just like Hubbard did. Hubbard wouldn't give you a full rundown on stuff. He would just drop hints and move on, right? And leave it to you to fill in the blanks. So he's caught on to how Hubbard did what he did. And I got to give it to him on that score, right? And he's in the right place already. He's in jail. That's good. So what are you going to say? But just a nice cherry on top of the week to see this.
It's a Sunday post. I thought it would be a nice laugh. So I'm glad I'm really glad you enjoyed it.
I did. I really did. I feel sorry for folks who fall for this. They really shouldn't be. This is not real stuff. All right. So that all being said, that's our weekly wrap up. Tony, thanks for joining me with this. I know you're out and about right now. Now I got to say, next week I'm going to be out and about. I'm going out to LA to do a film shoot production thing that you guys will hear about in the future. So we're not going to be connecting next week because I'm literally going to be filming and in the air on Sunday. So you won't have a show next week, but we'll catch up in 2 weeks. Tony, you want to give, so no real previews for this week, but then again, any previews for this week? Anything you want to share on what's coming up?
Oh, I mean, I'm trying to land a couple things that I've been working on that I think people are going to find very interesting. I hope I can. It's a little tough when I'm on the road, but I'm getting there.
Awesome. All right, folks. Well, thanks very much for coming around and watching us, go on about this stuff. Check out the other stuff on the channel. There's great stuff about Scientology here. And of course, there is Tony's Substack address right there on the screen. Go to it, get subscribed, get your notifications, and check back in with us on Mondays, just not next Monday, but Mondays for the weekly wrap up. We'll see you 2 weeks. Bye-bye.